And so I said, on my message board at that time, people from all over the world send me all of your letters with all of your stamps, and I might use your letters in the pages of my artwork in alchemy. And Donna sent me a wonderful envelope with a stamp of a butterfly on it and the stamps from the Philippines on it, and it made it into the page of an issue of the alchemy.
Really? Wow.
I don't remember your question, but I kind of do. I do. You said, there's a lot of psychology in my books, and is some of that researched? Some of it's definitely researched. There's a lot, not so much that I'm actively trying to research, but I just have a passion and interest in researching things, and the psychological. I have an interest in that quite a bit. And one of the things that I do myself is I have an art studio that I work with for people that have a variety of disabilities. It's called Visionaries and Voices. And a lot of those people are autistic people or have other challenges. And what I noticed is that some of those, basically this gives them an opportunity to be seen not with a label for what they can't do, but but get to see for what they can do. They'll get to do their artwork and be shown in galleries. And notice that some of these artists who, when I first meet them, they don't even talk. Like, some of them will really be in their shell and not talk or not express or not have an interest in interacting with people. And sometimes you tend to think people with autism or things on that spectrum, once they're that way, they stay that way. But what I've noticed is when they start expressing themselves with art and they start getting positive reinforcement from that art, and you start to realize they are not as interested in communicating with you the normal way that you want to be communicated with, but they're interested in communicating the way that they feel comfortable communicating. And art often gives them an avenue and a voice to do that. And then, as a side effect, they'll start talking as well. And they'll start interacting with people who come to their art shows and being a little more social and coming out of their shell and being different in a way that you wouldn't imagine. So, as well as the social aspect of that, the psychological aspect of that has always been fascinating to me. And my father had a lot of psychological issues and was sort of on the spectrum. I mean, if you would talk to him for more than 5 minutes, you would know that you're talking with somebody who's a little different. It'd be when I saw the film Rain Man, with Dustin Hoffman, that was kind of the first time I was like, oh, that's like my dad, Where he'll give you, he would tell you dates and names and details. You'll look up in the sky, see that's a 747 with a twin engine that was built in 1964. He'll tell you these details, but he won't be able to have an actual conversation with you where you say something that is response to what I say and I say in response to what you say. So I grew up in that situation. So I spent a lot of time confused as a child and trying to make sense of how to communicate with other people, and very aware that I was often communicating in ways that weren't acceptable and not understanding what their social cues were. And so for me, in a way, comic books for me were kind of a way to find my own voice in that way. When I was younger, I feel like when I was younger, I was like my father was. And then at a certain point, I was able to grow out of that, but my father never did. But I remember when I was young, I didn't know what expressions to make, or I didn't know what other people's expressions that they made to me meant. Or people would tell me, you need to look me in the eye when you're talking, so I didn't understand why I had to look them in the eye, but then I would constantly look them in the eye to a creepy degree, like that, and then I get up, people would get upset about that. And it wasn't until I started drawing and telling stories, even as a child. I don't know if you could consider these things comics, but it was like a rudimentary form of comics that I would think about, okay, when this person is saying these words, what kind of face should he have when he says it? And how should he be standing when he says it? And I learned that for the story, the story was my way of figuring it out, and then I would learn to apply it in real life. And so I felt like, for me, in a way, comics had become my vehicle to be able to communicate to people in general. And the person you're talking to right now is not like the person I was 10 years ago, and not the person I was 20 years ago, and not the person I was as a child. I would have a very different way of communicating. So I was fascinated with all those things anyway, and some of that kind of made it into the story itself. But then there's also a lot of things that make it into the story that aren't purposely or consciously researched, but are just, if you have an outlet for figuring some, like if you have an outlet, like with a, sometimes if you just write a story, you'll be surprised all the stuff that comes out that you don't know that you're wondering about. You know, sometimes just writing, sometimes you write and the characters think they have one motivation, but you realize they have other motivations that they don't even know they have. And sometimes you realize the same thing about yourself when you're writing. So a lot of that is research, but a lot of it's just discovery. You know, you just kind of do it, and what you want to do when you write is to learn about yourself. Like some people think you have it figured out ahead of time, and then you write a story. But what I find is once you write the story, it starts to reveal what it wants to be, and you start to reveal, you start to find out what the story is, and you start to learn about yourself from it. So I guess it's sort of a combination of both of those things. You know, it's kind of like you kind of do the work and then something shows up and surprises you, hopefully. And the other question is, if there was going to be another no agent story. I would like there to be another no agent story. I'm glad that you mentioned that. I was really happy with the Scarab story. I called it Scarab Lost in Translation. It was way before the movie, by the way. Way before the Lost in Translation film. Yeah, I was really happy with that story. And the fourth volume, the fourth library edition volume of Kabuki is going to have all the Masks of the No stories and the Scarab story collected together with some extra things. But I want to do more No stories, and probably what I would do with that is there are so many other artists that I want to work with, and I would like to write stories and work with other, like a different artist for each one of those characters, the way I did with Scarab, with Rick Mays, and with some of those other characters in Masks of the No. Thank you.